Where do I begin? I think I want to begin with Elizabeth Warren. Everyone is talking about it today. Elizabeth Warren was on the floor of the Senate, and she was giving a speech against Jeff Sessions, who has just been confirmed as the Attorney General. She was giving a speech that included some references to a letter that Coretta Scott King described, in which Coretta Scott King described Jeff Sessions during his 1980, I forgot the exact year, but it was in the 80s, a confirmation hearing for him to become a federal judge, in which it was pretty much determined that Jeff Sessions was too racist to be a federal judge at the time. Elizabeth Warren was attempting to read from that letter, and she was censured by her colleagues in the Senate, according to Rule 19, which everyone has gone and done some research on, including myself. I want to play a couple of clips of Senator Warren in her speech where she got censored, and then we'll talk about it. Here we go. Listen in. This is Elizabeth Warren.
Mr. President, I don't think I quite understand. I'm reading a letter from Coretta Scott King to the Judiciary Committee from 1986 that was admitted into the record. I'm simply reading what she wrote about what the nomination of Jeff Sessions to be a federal court judge meant and what it would mean in history for her.
This is a reminder, not pertinent necessarily to what you just shared. However, you stated that a sitting senator is a disgrace to the Department of Justice.
I think that may have been Senator Kennedy.
And this,
although I would be glad to repeat it in my own words.
Jesus, gangster.
the rule
there.
applies
Then I'm
to imputing conduct or motive through any form or voice to a sitting form of words includes quotes, articles, or other materials.
so quoting Senator Kennedy, calling then nominee Sessions a disgrace is a violation of Senate rules. It was certainly not in 1986.
In the opinion of the chair, it is.
So let me understand then.
Okay, so they go back and forth a little bit about this, and I'm going to play the rest of it, but I want to pause there. So this was the setup, right? The initial infraction was her citing or referencing Ted Kennedy's testimony, calling Jeff Sessions a disgrace in 1986, which she was and is. And I love that that Elizabeth Warren basically said, you know, I was quoting Ted Kennedy, but if you want, I'll say it myself. You know, I guess she was, you know, she was feeling herself there. And actually, I felt it too, Liz. It was actually pretty good. But anyway, so this was the setup. This was the initial warning. And then what actually caused her to be silenced was what transpired next, which was her quoting and referencing Coretta Scott King. And once she started doing that, that's when she was, quote unquote, brought to order by the president of the Senate as demanded by Mitch McConnell. So let's listen into that.
This administration accountable for its un-American, discriminatory, and reckless decision-making. In 2013, Senator Sessions voted against reauthorizing the Violence Against Women Act, a bill that expanded the protections and services provided to victims of sexual assault and domestic violence. There's a piece from the Bedford Minuteman that really tells the story of how sexual violence impacts Massachusetts. And this is what it said. They are mothers, daughters, sisters, fathers, sons, and brothers.
Mr. President.
They are.
Mr. President.
The majority leader.
The senators impugn the motives and conduct of our colleague from Alabama as warned by the chair. Senator Warren, quote, said Senator Sessions has used the awesome power of his office to chill the free exercise of the vote by black citizens. I call the senator to order under the provisions of Rule 19.
Mr. President,
Senator from Massachusetts.
Mr. President, I am surprised that the words of Coretta Scott King are not suitable for debate in the United States Senate. I ask leave of the Senate to continue my remarks.
Is there objection?
Object.
I appeal the ruling.
Objection is heard. The senator will take her seat.
All right. A lot of
I
parliamentarian
appeal the ruling
procedures
of the
there that took place. I wanted to play it in context because a couple of things happened there. Mitch McConnell interrupted Elizabeth Warren as she was actually quoting Maura Healey from Massachusetts about where Jeff Sessions stands on the Violence Against Women Act. And then that's when Mitch McConnell jumped in there and said that she impugned the honor, the integrity of a fellow colleague senator. And what he used, the words that he used, were actually the words from a letter from Coretta Scott King to the Senate in 1986. So it was interesting. It was like she didn't really quite get an opportunity to actually violate from just watching the clip, right? Watching the clip, she didn't get an opportunity to actually violate the warning that she was given. But instead, the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell came in with something she had previously said, quoting Coretta Scott King. The long and short of the story is that they use quote unquote Rule 19 to silence Elizabeth Warren. It really didn't work out too well for Republicans because now it has become a rallying cry. Mitch McConnell actually put out a statement saying that she persisted. She was warned. She persisted, and that became like I don't even know the whole phrase. I'm sure somebody right now is yelling at me. You know the whole phrase, but it became a rallying cry. And it has become the news of the day. And so, ultimately, the new attorney general is Jeff Sessions, and we'll talk about him in a minute. But it really just brought a light on the idea that you're not able in the Senate to talk about the motivations of another senator, and you have to have this forced camaraderie or this forced decorum that is highly disingenuous, and you're not able to discuss the motivations that drive senators to do the things that they do. If you're not able to discuss it during a debate in the Senate, then where are you going to discuss it? I'm sure that they would rather discuss it on the news, right? They would rather you discuss it and they want anywhere but in the Senate, because inside of the Senate, they're actually confronted with their own bullshit. And they can be confronted. And of course, they don't want that type of confrontation. If you know most human beings, they like to avoid confrontations. They would rather, instead of having a face-to-face debate and discuss face-to-face. And this is I'm going to take a sidestep. This is quite literally the beginnings of Rule 19 came from an actual altercation that took place on the Senate floor. And instead of saying, okay, let's have some decorum and we're going to censure anyone who actually fights, because this is what happened. There was a fight on the Senate floor, I believe back in 1902, according to the Atlantic. Instead of censuring them about fighting, actual fisticuffs, they made a rule to say that you can't discuss. And actually, I might as well just read it to you. You cannot, Rule 19 reads, no senator in debate shall directly or indirectly by any form of words impute to another senator or other senators any conduct or motive unworthy or unbecoming of a senator. So this is the rule. So basically, you cannot say that their motivations are X, Y, and Z if X, Y, and Z is not what's considered to be becoming of a senator. So you literally have a bunch of men and women in a place debating the issues completely incapable of discussing the motivations of the other senators' decisions and their votes if it's not becoming of a senator. The problem, it should not be the inability to discuss the motives. The problem should be the motives. Right. And where else are you going to discuss the motivations of the votes that they're taking except on the floor of the Senate? So Rule 19 from its inception is rather ludicrous. Instead of them creating a rule to further punish people who actually get into a fist fight. Let me give you a little bit more background. According to the Atlantic, it was 1902. The Senate was debating a treaty to annex the Philippines, and there were two senators, Senator Benjamin Pitchfork Benjamin Tillman, and South Carolina Democrat, who was a South Carolina Democrat, and John McLaurin. One senator got on the floor and spoke of his friend, his former friend, and said that that this senator was being bribed. The senator was turning coat. The senator, said a lot of things that his former friend didn't like. The former friend came in, long story short, said some things about the other senator, and they actually got into a fist fight. That's my kind of politics. Like, say it to my face and let whatever be, let it be. But instead of what they did there was to completely neuter the ability for senators to discuss the motivations publicly of these senators. So you can't get on the floor and talk about the reason Senator X is supporting this bill is because he was funded by this lobbyist. You can't say that. He took donations from this lobbyist or from this corporation. You can't say that. And so all you have is kabuki theater. All you have are senators getting down there saying milquetoast statements, completely incapable of talking about the motivations of their colleagues. They could talk about the president. They could talk about congressmen. They could talk about people outside, but they can't talk about each other because I guess they're afraid that it's going to lead to fisticuffs. So the end result was Elizabeth Warren being silenced, but in their attempt to silence her, they actually magnified and amplified her voice probably 10,000-fold. I mean, I know everybody knows Elizabeth Warren, but this particular issue has brought her into the limelight. To some people disagree with it, whatever. I don't have a problem with it because her intention was to fight against Jeff Sessions, which every Democrat should have been fighting against Jeff Sessions. All but one voted against Jeff Sessions, and we'll talk about him. I'll leave all the expletives out. We'll talk about him momentarily.